to Foluke and everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be able to speak to you today. So my name is Dr. Bahija Raimi Abraham. I'm a pharmacist, a scientist, and a lecturer at King's College London, where my research group focuses on solving pharmaceutical challenges in aging and global health. I can actually see one of my PhD researchers there, Tamara, hello. On top of that, I started a social enterprise in 2015, which had the aim of engaging the public with STEM, so that's science, technology, engineering, and maths, research through the arts. And at the time, we were looking at street art. And I sort of paused that for a bit and revived it back in 2020. So we're back in operation. And I've just recently started a podcast called Monday Science, which is focused on providing a weekly discussion on the latest in science, health, and technology. So I think I've done that in less than 2 minutes, but please feel free to ask me any questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Let's go to Stephanie next, please.
Oh, you're muted. Now you're unmuted. Here we go.
Hello, I'm so sorry, that's a rookie error. So my name is Stephanie Passari, and I'm a journalist and an editor with CNN International. I lived in London for many decades, about 30 years, and then decided to move back to Nigeria in 2016 where I was born. I was born here, and I moved back here to head up CNN's West Africa operations, and it's been great. Yeah, it's been great to be back home, and I kind of edit CNN Africa Digital, and I report on air for CNN International on breaking news in this region. I also just recently started a series on Instagram Live looking at the people who are helping in this pandemic, COVID heroes and newsmakers, we call them. So yeah, it's been a great ride, and I won the Precious Award. Gosh, when did I win it? So 2012, I think. 2012, I won, I think, Outstanding Women in the Media, and it's been fantastic. It's the first award I ever won, so it's really, I have very fond memories, and well done to Foluke for everything you do. It's amazing the way you bring women of color together, so thank you. And I'm looking forward to this evening, so thank you for having me.
Brilliant, thank you, Stephanie. And last but not least, Janet. Tell us about yourself in 2 minutes. What do you do? What Precious Award did you win? And in what year?
Okay, so I am Janet Mohappy Banks. I'm a breakthrough coach for ambitious and experienced entrepreneurs, usually female solo entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs that I choose to work with. My job is basically to take them from their sort of high income to a phenomenal income, because when we have a phenomenal income, we can have a phenomenal impact into the world. And I do that through mindset work, through energy work, because, you know, we're all made of energy. Yeah. So when we can,
yes,
where we can learn to control our emotions, control our energy, and actually connect with our highest selves, and then get the messages of our highest selves into our human, then we can actually really, really move forwards very, very quickly. Back in 2010, which is when I won my Precious Award, I won it for a startup business, and that was making cakes. So very, very different to now, but it was through making cakes that I have actually got to where I am now. So I used to be a luxury cake designer, selling my cakes at the Ritz and the Connaught and places like that when I won my Precious Award. But you see, what happened is that I got to that level. I was on TV, I was in all the magazines, and then I freaked out because I didn't belong there. Who was I to be there? Yeah. And so I freaked out, I burned out. I used to work so much because, as you know, as a Black woman, we are taught that we have to work harder than everybody else to get anything that we want. Yeah. So I burned out, and I was incapacitated for 5 years, literally on the verge of death. I had a digestive disorder, so I was throwing up every single day for nearly 5 years. And it's only through recovering from that, through your chiropractor, that I discovered that this new way of creating a business, this new way of creating everything that we want to bring into the world. So that's how come I do what I do now from where I was then.
Oh my God, that's incredible. That is incredible. Yeah, wow. That's okay. I need you in your life. I need to learn how to make my money magnify.
One day I'll be able to go.
But that is incredible. But you also spoke about energy and impact in the world. And so I want to ask you, how are you all coping with everything that is going on with COVID, to the racial injustices? Because as you know, images that we are seeing is also traumatic, and trauma, as you all know, is still energy. So how are you guys coping? How are you dealing? Let's start with you, Janet, and then Bahija, and then Stephanie, please.
So I'll be honest, it's been exhausting, hasn't it? I mean, I have just felt absolutely exhausted since, last Tuesday was it? I think it was Tuesday. I don't know, all the days have seemed to have gone into one. My brother lives in LA, and so I've always had a fear around, what could happen to him out there with the racism. We just have to call it what it is. With the racism in America, it's always worried me. But obviously this week, it's really brought it so close to home. And I have literally I've never, I said earlier in our meeting that we had this morning, I have never felt my blackness so strongly as I am feeling it right now. And I have never felt quite so, it's weird, it's almost disempowered and really empowered at the same time. I feel just disempowered because there is so much pain going on at the moment, but empowered because I know that it's through this pain that phenomenal change will happen. And I know to my core that, this is the breaking of the egg and the scrambling it up before we get a delicious meal, So the way that I've been dealing with it, I've been journaling a lot, just getting it all out of my head and onto the page, because as soon as you do that, you stop thinking about it so much. I've really, really gone into my meditation and my Tai Chi. Love my Tai Chi. And yeah, just it's a constant case of keep grounding my energy, keep bringing myself back, because I have a tendency, I know, of just letting my energy disappear back up there where it wants to be right now. It doesn't want to be here. But if we do that, then we can't focus. We can't stay focused on what we need to be focusing on right now. So yeah, really gone back into all of the mindfulness, all of the personal development, gratitudes, journaling, meditation, really, bringing it back home, and really just allowing myself to feel, allowing myself to feel the pain, allowing myself to feel the disempowerment, allowing myself to feel the anger, to feel the fear, because it's only when we actually feel these things and move through them that we can get to the other side. We can actually, get through it. Because if we try and hold it all in, then it doesn't work. Which is exactly what's happening right now. Yeah, we've all been held in so much that there's an explosion.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Janet. Totally agree with everything you said. Dr. Bahija, where are you at?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in therapy at the moment, actually, because so thank you. The interesting thing is, so my own journey in terms of, so when you talked about how have you been feeling around COVID, the complexities that comes with that, and then now this additional one. So for me, from a work perspective, I have a research group. And one of my increasing frustrations with COVID was that, especially as somebody that works in global health and public health, and in that space, there was a lot of frustration. I had a lot of frustration and anxiety around waiting for the WHO or waiting for people in leadership positions to make a decision and declare that COVID-19 was a pandemic. From January, my colleagues and I have been having discussions, all the things you all, like, not you all, sorry, that sounded really you all non-scientists, but people have been finding about chloroquine and COVID. We've all been having these discussions since January. It's, you know, and what was increasingly frustrating was from January, we were clear that something was wrong. And we were waiting for leaders to make a decision. And I remember around March, I was starting to panic because, as I said already, I have a research group that I lead. And my issue was, I'm also a leader, I'm in a leadership role. So if nobody above me is making a decision. If I don't make a decision, then that would actually put the people who I lead at risk, and myself. And I remember the week ending 13th, Friday the 13th. But I just made a decision that, right, I don't care. We're all getting out. Everybody has to work from home. We'll figure it out. And so the journey since then to now has been trying to get used to working from home. And you realize certain things that maybe that journey that you took to work was your time to switch off or decompress before you came home, and home was your safe haven. Right now, home is everything. It's where you work, it's where you try and switch off. It's quite a lot. So I was finding myself finding coping mechanisms in that world. But one of the things that I think a lot of us can probably agree with is that a side effect of quarantine, ignore COVID now, but a side effect of quarantine is that it really can intensify, it adds pressure to any issues that you may or may not have realized you had before, and it brings it to the surface. So this is a time where people may realize, you know what, I am so alone, and I mean that alone in not just the physical sense, but alone within myself. And so this can really intensify a lot of things for people. Then you add racial tensions on top of everything. And I would say for me personally, the last week has been quite triggering because you get a lot of people saying, oh, this is an American issue. It's got nothing to do with us over here. Trauma is trauma, as you've said, Lisa. And it doesn't matter whether it's in America that has been our trigger to think. I've been thinking about racism and racist experiences that I've had throughout my own personal life and my professional life, and then having conversations with people. But one of the things that has actually been quote unquote good, if we can look for a positive, has been the conversations. I've had very interesting conversations with my friends, my Black friends, but I've also had very interesting conversations with my non-Black friends where, you know, somebody asked, you know, oh, can you explain what's going on, but I've actually never asked you what's the quote unquote Black experience. And I was just explaining, you know, just, I guess you could be going to work and you're just in your zone, listening to your podcast, Monday Science, thank you. But you're doing whatever. And then next minute, somebody pushes past you and you're like, oh, they've just pushed past me. And then they say, oh, get out of the way, you Black, B-I-T-C-H. And you're like, it's 8:30 in the morning. I was just trying to get to work and somebody's already called me something. So I explained that to her. She was like, that's a concept that it's just not something she thought of. So I think that in this time, we also have to be sensitive to the fact that with the triggering aspect of not just quarantine, then on top of that, you're adding racial tensions, that people may not respond to it in the way that you want them to or expect them to. No, not everybody is going to use their social media platform to say anything. Maybe for some people, and I'm actually one of these, where just even putting the Black square up on Tuesday was very hard because it was like, I'm just tired. That's a lot of things that a lot of the feedback I'm hearing from people is, I'm tired, you know? And I think if there's one thing that we really just sort of, just as I conclude, if there's one thing that we can almost maybe take away is that just note that it's triggering for everyone and everybody responds to that trigger in very different ways. So we can't judge the other person from just not posting to trying to post. And if they post it, if it's not sufficient to what you expect them to do, just respect the fact that they are going through their own things. So yeah, that's how I've been feeling.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Khadija. And Stephanie, where are you at?
Wow. So, you know, I'm obviously physically in Lagos, and when the pandemic first started, because Nigeria has been through Ebola in 2014, there was a lot of lockdown measures, a lot of strict measures taken very quickly. So I've been working at home now for like 3 months, and also coupled with the fact working with a global organization, they ordered all their employees to work from home very, very early on, like early March. So I've been at home and we've been pretty much under lockdown, and it's just starting to relax a little bit. So, you know, I think those measures that Nigeria took has probably helped it. You know, cases are very low right now, like 10,000 cases, maybe less than 300 deaths. So I've been at home, and like, you know, one of the other panelists said, home is everything. I have a 9-year-old daughter, I'm homeschooling, I'm working in the most insanely busiest time of my job right now. And so I feel like I have one default mode, which is busy. And that's just something that is personal to me anyway. I just like to be busy. And I think it's a coping mechanism. I like to, so a lot of my coping mechanisms in this time has been just to create. And which is why I started this Instagram series where we talk to people on the front line, and you know, every week we have 2 days a week where we talk to them. That's just something for me to like say, in this time where we are writing history effectively, what is my contribution to this time? And I'm really mindful of that, and I really want to document the people who are helping, the people who are at the front lines, the people who are making an impact. That's my job, that's what I do anyway, but mindful of the fact that this time is going to be written about extensively, and I want to leave a footprint. So a lot of it is kind of really focused on that. And I know that, you know, I am looking after my mental health, you know, because I took a week off and I'm taking time, but essentially I'm a workaholic. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, I've just been working. I've been working, and actually right now I am a little bit racked with guilt because my daughter is 9 years old. She's not been to visit anybody, no play dates, nothing, no school. And I'm like, wow, how do I navigate this? How do I make this a good experience for her so that she doesn't break down? Like, what are the coping mechanisms that I can build in for her? So that's what's consuming me at the moment, because I created mine. So I'm really mindful of the fact that it's getting a lot for her now. So yeah, it's just a lot of like mummy guilt mixed with working too much, mixed with I really must take a break now. But then I'm really like motivated to keep working and documenting what is happening in this time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And that actually leads me on to my next question, which is, what inspired you to set up your business or enter into the field that you currently work in? And what has the challenges been? So Stephanie, let's go back to you, because you mentioned that you're really motivated to document, you know, the experiences of people who are on the ground, and that you want to leave a legacy and a footprint. So what was your initial, was that the same trigger, the same wants that you had when you began your career in journalism?
So I'm one of those weird people who always knew what they wanted to do. I knew from 12 years old that I wanted to be a journalist. And, you know, I love to write, I love to kind of ask questions and just really tell people stories. So that was my motivation. Some music interlude there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my motivation. And it's always been the motivation. It's been in various forms and mediums. You know, I've worked on newspapers, I've worked in digital, I've worked in broadcast. So it's on different mediums, but it's always been about storytelling and in its various forms. So that's always been my interest and passion. And that's why I became a journalist. And I remember when I told my parents, when we just moved to the UK, I moved to the UK in 1989. And I told them that I wanted to be a journalist, and they didn't know any Black journalists. They didn't know anyone who was a journalist. And obviously on TV screens in the UK, everybody's, apart from who is it, Trevor McDonald, or I don't know, some like
Trevor
one
McDonald, yeah.
random.
Moira Stewart.
Exactly, like Moira Stewart. Oh my God.
Yes, of course.
You know, they didn't know anybody.
Legends.
And then they said, oh, well, we know someone who's an accountant. And they invited her to come and talk to me. And she was giving me advice about how she became an accountant. I was like, well, I don't want to be an accountant. So, you know, it's been a long process trying to become a journalist in the UK as a Black female, because it's not the kind of the obvious career choice. It's not populated with a lot of Black females. Maybe that's changed somewhat now, but at the time it wasn't. So that was one of the challenges, you know, trying to really navigate where, you know, you've got all these kind of middle class folks who would just get their sons and daughters work experience at a Beeb or on one of the broadsheets or whatever. I didn't have any of those contacts. And I had to really just make my way. You know, I remember New Nation. New Nation was my big break. I don't know if you remember that newspaper. It was similar to The Voice. And I just finished university, and I went for work experience for 6 weeks, and I stayed. I was paid a pittance, and I would work in a pub. There was a pub on my road in Clapham called the Falcon on Bedford Road. I would work there in the evening and go to New Nation in the daytime. But, you know, I was so passionate about this career path that I'd chosen. And it didn't matter to me that I had to do all of these things that perhaps looking back now, none of my counterparts had to do. They just like walked into jobs in various places, you know, through contacts. So yeah, you know, those are amongst the biggest challenges. Like as a Black female, as a working class Black female growing up in the UK, you just don't have the contacts to break into the media industry. You have to work very, very, very hard to do that. And, you know, I met a few people along the way who introduced me to other people, and obviously I'm here. But it's something I'm mindful of. And actually someone messaged me on Twitter today to say, oh, you know, I'm looking for support as a young Black journalist. And it really made me think, wow, I have to do something, and I have to give back to these young ladies who are trying to navigate their way in the same way that I was 20 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you think moving back to Nigeria was something you had to do to accelerate in your career?
Excuse me, sorry, let me just charge my laptop so I don't disappear. Well, moving back to Nigeria for me has been honestly the making of me and the making of my career, because I realized that even though I didn't think that I confronted racism overtly in the UK, and I didn't, you know, London is a kind of a different beast, you know, you're not kind of seeing those, or certainly I didn't, those kind of very, very in your face instances of racism. But when you come to a place like Nigeria, you realize that there are so many doors that are closed to you that you don't even know are closed to you, right? I liken it to being in a beautiful house where, you know, your nice surroundings and you're walking around and say, oh, this is lovely, yeah. But then after a while, you notice that there's a part of the house that's even more beautiful, that's bigger, that's better than where you are, but it's closed. You can't even get access. How do you get over there? You're like looking, how do you get over there? You can't. And that's how I felt when I moved back here, because it just opened my eyes to the fact that there are many parts of British society that are just not open to us as people of color. And people would never admit that, because racism in the UK is very much in a very, it's not overt. It's what is left unsaid that is usually more insidious, you know, which is how I kind of compare American and UK racism. Racism in the UK is very insidious because it's not tangible sometimes. And there are people making decisions about your career, about your life, that you will never know about, but they are closing you up effectively and pulling ranks. And, you know, it's a nod, it's a look, it's a, you know, code words that don't include you. So coming to Nigeria really made me realize that. And, you know, Nigeria is not a bed of roses. I'm not pretending it is, but I feel accepted, just, you know, unconsciously. Like there's no kind of pretense about it. I just am. I breathe. I walk freely. There's no microaggression. There's no, you know what I mean. It's not tangible. Like,
yeah,
nobody asks where you're from, in any kind of way that makes you feel that you don't belong. So that for me is just like the biggest relief. It's almost like you're carrying this heavy load and you didn't even know you were carrying it, and then you get to put it down and you're like, oh, my back hurts, and I didn't know, you know. So that's really one of the most fundamental kind of impacts of being in Nigeria for me. And people just accept you. People are so driven here. They're so driven, they want to make it. There's a survival instinct. And that survival instinct is a strength, but it's also a weakness, because it's a society that if you're weak or perceived to be weak, you're not helped. But if you have a survival instinct and you're strong, then you're ahead of the pack. And I don't really think a society should be built like that, you know. But yeah, I mean, I've become incredibly ambitious. Like, I thought I was ambitious in UK, but here it's like spiraled times 10, because everyone's here, oh, I'm on my 3rd master's. Like, I'm doing my PhD next month. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I only have they say my 1st degree. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I only have my 1st degree, you know. So it's really enabled me to shift my mindset and just think about who I am as me and not as a Black female. And I think that is freeing sometimes. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That share was just so rich. The layers in that was absolutely incredible. And just for me personally, just hearing that, you know, you are in a country where you feel accepted, and that alone has released something off your back that you didn't even know you was carrying in London, it actually just speaks volumes for me right now. So thank you for your share. Dr. Bahija, what inspired you to enter into your field, and what have the challenges been for you?
Okay, thank you. I also realized in my excitement in my introduction to speak under 2 minutes, I didn't actually explain what award I got. So there's a problem. So I actually won the 2018 Outstanding Woman in STEM award, which I guess maybe you didn't know, but yeah, that's the award I got. So my journey is very interesting. Thank you, Lisa. Very interesting because so my family heritage is Nigeria and Trinidad, so Nigerian and Trinidadian heritage. And my grandparents went to McGill. Education is very, very important in my family. This is my grandparents, my mother's side. And when I was young, as most, I don't want to generalize, but you know, there's some professions our parents would like us to go into. And I had my stethoscope, my doctor's set, very early on, and I'm sure I played with it. That was fun. That was fine. But what I actually wanted to be an actress. I've always been very into the arts. I would draw, not well, by the way, but I would draw. Like I expressed myself through the arts. I used to write poetry a lot when I was younger. And so when it came to picking A-level, so for GCSEs, I wasn't allowed to do drama, but it's okay because I did English speaking and listening, and I did debating. And I've always had this side of me that's very passionate about the arts, but I was also naturally very good at the sciences, and like physics was one of my favorite topics. But the two worlds, I didn't need to make a choice about those, because you don't really, when you're at school, you can just, you've got all the topics that you do. And then when it came to university, for A-level, I did A-level drama, and then, oh, Amazon delivery, ignore that. And then, I just heard a knock, I was a bit anxious. Anyway, sorry, and for A-levels I did drama, science, drama, biology, chemistry, and physics. So again, you can see I was still sort of straddling these two worlds. And when it came to deciding, you know, what degree to do, the first degree, as Stephanie, my mum, I was very much like, well, I just wanted to do anything so I could get back to acting. That was my plan. I was like, sure, whatever. So I remember my mum got this, the NHS jobs, there was just like this pamphlet with NHS jobs and showing the different ones. So my grandmother is a retired physiotherapist. So my mum was like, physiotherapy, what do you think? And I was like, I don't think I have the personality for that, because my grandmother is very, very caring. Now, I'm not saying pharmacists aren't caring, by the way, but just when I was like, no, I don't think that suits me. My granddad was, on my mom's side, was an engineer. So looking at these jobs, my mum reminded me that one of my aunties was a pharmacist, and she had her own business. So I was like, and so my mum suggested that, you know, you could do pharmacy, and then you can have your own business and you can get back to acting and do you, like, that's fine. And you at least would have something that sustains you whilst you're pursuing your acting career. And I was like, yes, okay, I've got everything sorted. So that was my choice for doing pharmacy, because I liked chemistry as well. So I was like, okay, this seems interesting. And at least I'll be able to do, so pharmacy is 4 years at university, and then you have 1 year when you do your training. I was very excited, and I remember starting my first year, so pumped, and also the other thing as well, and as I've mentioned, for me, education was a given. So, you know, up until university, everyone's like, oh, how's school? You know, nobody was like, oh, you're at university. They still refer to university as school. So I didn't actually realize that university was a choice. So when in the first semester, people were dropping out, I was calling my mom, I was like, Mummy, people are dropping out of school. Like, what are they going to do? And she was like, yeah. And I said, did you know that people of school? And she said, no, they can, you can't. So just. And so this is how I went. Now I found, so I, in my first year of university, I enjoyed myself. Yes, I did. And I don't think I took it seriously. Let's be honest. I didn't actually take it seriously. And because of that, I also took a lot of things for granted. I took my kind of the foundation of education, the foundation of university. I took it all for granted. I enjoyed myself, and that's that. And then a reality check kicked in where I had a resit for one of my modules, and it was my first ever like big failure. I didn't understand what was happening, because I don't fail, right? I'm just a happy-go-lucky, planning on being an actress. This is just a side gig, you know, type thing. And I had this resit, and it was during, so during the summer holidays, what they recommend you do for most vocations is do like a summer placement or something. So I had got this summer placement at Tesco's pharmacy. Everyone's like, oh, my mom was proud. I was getting, you know, got this 6-week placement. It was around the corner. But I had this resit, and it was a resit in a chemistry module. Did I not just say I liked chemistry? And then the insult upon injury was that I had to pay for the resit. But bearing in mind, I'm a student, who had to pay? My mother, right? So it was a turning point for me, because I realized, oh, I've been showing off, telling everyone I'm at university, I'm studying pharmacy, whoop, whoop, and I have failed. What is that? You know, I've not been taking it seriously. There's nothing wrong with partying, by the way, but party in moderation and make sure you do your studies. And just to sort of cut that part short. So basically in that failure, I realized that I wasn't really motivated enough, right? Because I've always played sport. I played netball since I was at school. I did athletics. So I'm quite a competitive person, but with myself, I do not look left or right because I'm on my own race. And I realized that I hadn't applied that to my life. I'd just forgotten myself in that moment. And that failure actually made me sit and think, okay, Bahija, you're competitive. So I'm going to give you you're going to challenge yourself to get the highest form of education. At the time, I didn't know what the highest form of education was. So I went and asked my head of school at the time. And he was like, well, the highest form of education is a PhD. I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll do that then. And then he said, but you're currently failing. And I was like, okay. Because I had this bomber jacket, sorry, just to digress. I had this bomber jacket that I would wear in the lectures, and I'll be sitting there just sleeping. Gosh, this is why online isn't good, because I just did the impression of the sleeping. But I would be with my bomber jacket in the lecture, sleeping. I mean, and there are few Black people in this school, and one of them has a bomber jacket, is sleeping in lectures. That's to tell you where I was at. So I remember my head of school was like, well, highest form of education, PhD. And I was like, okay, what do I need to get for that? And he was like, well, you need to get a 2-1, and you'll do this research. And I was like, cool, sounds good. And then he was like, okay. And I spoke to somebody else and they were like, okay, sure. But actually, I just decided to focus on, I'm going to aim for the highest form of education. And then at least hopefully I'll become a pharmacist and then I can get back to my acting. But on that journey, I fell in love with research because I didn't realize that you could be creative in science. I didn't know. And one of the things that fascinates me with what I do is that as you think it, you can do it. Things that we think of in the lab, things and ways we try and figure out to solve different challenges, we can do that. We can make it in the lab. And I still till today find it such a blessing that I'm in a position that I can try and solve a problem from my imagination and my knowledge through science. So I could talk forever about this, but the long story cut short is why I'm where I'm at today in terms of being a scientist, being a pharmacist, is truly because of, firstly, my first ever big failure and the growth from that, because we actually grow in failure. We don't actually grow in success, we grow in failure, and we can't be scared of failure. We're always so paranoid and worried there's that saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. And one of the biggest fears for people is failure, yeah? So I know I grew in my failure, and then I discovered a passion that I hadn't thought of. Now you're wondering, did I still pursue the acting? Yes, I did. When I was writing my thesis, I was an extra in Skyfall. I haven't done anything since then. That's the one, I just did that and that was it. But yeah, I did still, thank you so much. If you press pause in the tube scene, my face is blocked, but I'm there, please. And then just to end, remember I said like my passion has been the arts, has been trying to merge those two worlds of science or STEM and the arts. Well, it got to a stage in my career where I was actually able to do that. So that's when I started the social enterprise, which is STEAMED Collective, which is trying to push and showcase the amazing like STEM research that's going on through the arts. There's a bit of a journey and story with that, but it's just to say that I'm where I'm at now, really focused on passion and self-reflection, constant self-reflection, and trying to grow and push those barriers. There's two barriers. They're the barriers you set for yourself. They're the barriers that the world tries to set for you. And constant thing is trying to walk against that barrier and walk against that fear of that barrier. So it's not to say I haven't experienced hurdles in my career, I have. But I think it is the key saying, if I could leave you guys with anything, would be feel the fear and do it anyway. I didn't come up with that saying, but I read a book that focused on that. And what did you say? Sorry, is the name of
Sue Jeffers.
Yes, Sue Jeffers, thank you. She coined that term. It's a fantastic book and I strongly recommend it because it just is a reminder that we all go through fear. It's how you decide to manage it And it really is that thing about feel the fear and feel the fear and do it anyway. And for me, that's why I am where I am today. So yeah.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much. And to me, you are an actress. You're a natural. You're probably the most personable. You're probably the most personable scientist and pharmacist I'll ever come into contact with. So you're making chemistry sound interesting. So you don't need to go to university to get a degree in performing arts. I mean, I've got one, but you don't need one to be personable. So you're an actress anyway.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wow. You're welcome, darling. And Janet, so what inspired you to set up your business or enter into the fields that you're in, and what have the challenges been? Sorry, Janet, before you launch into your expressions, I'm just going to remind everyone the Q&A is going to happen after Janet has answered the question. So please, can you begin to think about what question you would like to ask the panelists, because I'll be opening up for you guys around 8:05. So please get thinking, and then when I ask you, does anyone have any questions, please press the raise your hand button so Jess can see who you are, and then you can ask your question. Sorry, Janet, sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
No problem at all. I sort of briefly went into how I became a breakthrough coach. And it was through very nearly dying through my cake business. As I mentioned before, the cake business was really successful. You know, I won a Precious Award, I was on TV, I was in all the magazines. And as a result of overworking, I literally used to work like 36 hours on the trot, because I had this deepest desire to be the best cake designer that there ever was, to deliver the freshest cakes that there ever was. So I used to, you know, and I had two small children at the time. They're 16 and 14 at the moment, but back then they were, you know, very little. And so I was full-time mother, full-time worker, full-time wife, and it just got too much for me. So yeah, one day I just started throwing up, and they couldn't work out what was the matter. And it turned out that it was, there was no signal going from my brain and into my stomach. So no electrical signal. It's like we say, we're all energy, we run on electricity. Yeah. And if there's a blockage, in my case, probably because I was hunched over a table like this, making sugar flowers for literally hours on end. And before that, I was a computer programmer, computer scientist. So I was hunched over a computer for hours on end. And yeah, my vagus nerve, which is a nerve that runs, it's called the wandering nerve. It controls your eyesight, your heart, your lungs, your digestion. And that was trapped in the top of my back. And they did a brain scan, they did a stomach scan, but they didn't do the bit in between. And so nobody could actually identify where this blockage was. So like I say, I just started throwing up one day, and I literally didn't stop for 5 years. And my business at the time was really good. It was going incredibly, incredibly well. You know, like I was, like I say, you know, making cakes for people at the Ritz. I had a consultation for making cake at the Savoy, and just before I went out to that consultation, I threw up all down me. I changed my clothes quickly, went to the consultation, threw up in the house. And it was at that point that I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep making cakes and vomiting constantly. And I held off. I held off, you know, I worked through the sickness as much as I possibly could. And then in August 2012 was the day of reckoning, and I just said, I'm going to have to close it. And closing a business while it is still on the rise is the hardest thing that I think I've ever done at all, because when you have a business, it is your baby. This thing, this entity that was my business was my third child. I put as much time, as much love, as much dedication into this thing as my children. Don't tell them. And it was so hard. It was absolutely heartbreaking. And Felipe, I'll tell you, I got rid of my Twitter account, I got rid of my phone number, I got rid of everything, and really threw my toys out of the pram. And we moved from the London area down to Cornwall. I'm currently in Cornwall because the prognosis was a slow death by starvation. Slow death by starvation because I had just pushed myself too much. I didn't listen to my body. When my body was telling me to stop, I didn't listen. I carried on through. When my body was telling me to just sit down, I didn't. I just carried on through. And eventually your body will catch up to you. Your body will shut you down if you don't listen to all the messages that it is telling you time and time and time and time again. So I had to learn the hard way. And I came down to Cornwall basically to die, because it is very, very beautiful here. I got all of my affairs in order. Before that, my husband decided to leave and go off with his secretary. He turned 40. It was, one of those things, whilst I was waiting for a brain scan result. But that was incredible. That was absolutely incredible, because when I got better, when he left, I then had a choice. I had to look after 2 children on my own or die. And so I made preparations for looking after my children. I got the most enormous life insurance policy I could get. And I had to get a new one because when he left, he cancelled all the old life insurance policies that we had. And because I had a pre-existing condition, it was obviously ramped up in the premiums. And so I got all of that in order. I got provision for the children. I got somebody else other than him to look after the children, because neither of the children wanted to go to him. And then once all of that was in order, and once I'd really, really come to terms with the fact that this was it, I probably wasn't going to see my son's 10th birthday. Once I truly appreciated that and thought, you know what? It's going to be fine. I have done all the preparation that I could do for them to be fine. So I am fine. I am fine to pop off this mortal coil now. And it was at that point that I found a chiropractor. And the chiropractor healed me. She cracked my back, and on the sixth session of cracking my back, the most incredible headache in the side of my head woke me up. I was awake for about 30 seconds in the middle of the night with this pain going into the side of my head here. And what the chiropractor says is that was the synapses all rejoining again. The electrical signal had found its way through at last. And the next day I woke up pain-free for the first time in over 4.5 years. It was the most incredible experience I think I've ever had. And every morning when I wake up now, and it was, 4 years ago now that this happened, every morning I try to recapture how I felt that morning. Because that was the morning that I realized, oh my God, it's amazing not being in pain. Absolutely amazing. And then it took another 4 months for all of the symptoms to disappear completely. And when I had this little period of no sickness whatsoever, I decided that I was officially well. And this was it. This was the day that my life starts again. And that's when I realized, oh my God, if my ex hadn't left me in the way that he left me, when he left me, I would be dead now. And that's when I realized everything is always working for our greatest good, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it doesn't sound like it, and nobody else can appreciate what is going on in your brain and what is going on in your life as a good thing, when you can look back and go, oh my God, if that hadn't happened, I would be dead. You realize that that desperation that you were in was the most incredible moment of your life. And so that's how come I became a coach, because I wanted to pass that on to other people. And I started as a business coach because that's what I knew. I knew business. I knew how to build a successful business. And I wanted to help people have this amazing business, but without the burnout, without the stress, without all of the nonsense that went with it. And then through various incarnations of my coaching, as I learned more, as I grew more as a person, as I understood more about universal energy, metaphysics, and all of that, and just energy in general, actually, the fact that we are all energy, the fact that everything we think, Dr. Bahija, she said it perfectly, think it, do it, solve a problem with her imagination. This is exactly how we live life. We just don't realize that this is the way we're living it. Our thoughts are energy. We attract those thoughts to us. They didn't start off in our head. They started off up there. When we get ourselves into a particular mood, a particular emotion, then we get a thought that creates an action. And when you decide, Dr. Bahija, she said it again, she decided that she was gonna succeed. It's that decision. It's that decision that will take you to where you want to be, the imagination and the decision. And that's what I love. That's what I absolutely adore seeing in my clients, when it all starts clicking into place, when they start really feeling into where they're already going, because it's already created. It's already created. We just need to step into it. Sorry, I just realized I'm going over time. So.
Oh, wow. No, it's fine.
Amazing.
I can listen to you all day. Like, I want to know now. So firstly, thank you for sharing, because that is really personal. But there's just so much in that I've taken away from it. So thank you for sharing. Do you have a book coming out? Are you going to be doing a TED Talk? Because, girl,
I have a book.
Hey! Woo!
And it's actually won an award as well. My award-winning international Amazon #1 bestseller.
Lovely.
That is amazing. Okay, so the next question is, are you doing a TED Talk anytime soon?
I would absolutely love to do a TED Talk very soon. Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. I'm not,
because I could literally listen to you all day. Oh my God, that was crazy. I'm going to be really honest and say, I know your husband gave you that breakthrough that you didn't realize you was going to have, but do you know what? I believe in karma. That's all. That's really bad. I'm just like, what the hell? But anyway, let me move on.
I know that we're not yet.
I'd like to also think. Sorry?
Sorry, I know we're not supposed to interject, but Bahija has a TED Talk.
Bahija has a TED Talk. Oh, sorry.
She does have a TED Talk. She does have a TED.
Thank you.
And it's incredible as well. And so does Stephanie.
Oh my God. I'm the only one that hasn't got one then.
Janet, it's your turn now. Come on. We've done it. Come on now. Thank you for highlighting that. Thank you.
It just means that you're next, Janet.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so the time is 13 minutes past 8. So let me just, so guys, if you do have a Q&A, a question for the panelists, please use your reaction raise hand button. And whilst you're doing that, for the people who joined a little bit later on, you may have missed this. So at 8:30, we're going to be doing a breakout room. And you may see that on our screens, everyone except for Stephanie, they have some words in brackets. and that relates to the breakout room that you'll be going to at 8:30 if you are interested in those particular topics. So let me just run it through again. There is How to Be Anti-Racist as People of Colour by Jess. So if that's a breakout room that you're interested in attending, then just put anti-racist in brackets by your name. Working Mums will be delivered by Grace. So again, just Working Mums or just Mums in brackets by your name. Casual Networking and How to Do It is with Dr. Bahija. So just put networking. How to Develop the Mindset to Move Your Career Forward will be done by Janet. So just put develop or mindset. And then How to Self-Care in These Times will be delivered by me. So then just put self-care in brackets. Now, how you do that is you click onto your square. You will see 3 dots. You just click onto the 3 dots and you will see that it says rename. So keep your name as it is, but then just add in brackets the breakout room that you want to attend at 8:30. Now, what will then happen is Jess will see where everyone wants to be, and then she'll do this magical thing. I don't even know how it works, but she's going to push you into those groups, those rooms, sorry. So you will be where you need to be at 8:30. So please, when you're ready, just quickly change that and let's continue. So does anyone have a question? Please raise your hand. Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to read as I'm talking. It's not working.
I've got Talia, I think. I just unmuted you, so you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for this. This is a great first event for me attending, and thank you to all the speakers. You've been amazing. I have a question for Stephanie. And my question is, it's all about that sense of home, because when you spoke about Nigeria, my heritage is Jamaican, so I'm British born and bred, but my parents are Jamaican anyway. That whole sense of home and belonging, when you spoke on it, I just wondered, like, how old were you when you came to the UK, and how hard was the decision to go back to Nigeria? Because actually, did you think of it as home? Had you gone every year with your family growing up, and do you think you're going to stay there? Because I guess like 5 years ago, I went to Jamaica probably for only the second time ever. Like, we didn't go there growing up, couldn't afford it to take mum, dad and 3 kids. So I actually only went as an adult, and I went thinking I would find that peace and home, and maybe I could make my life here. And then I'm like, I get there and I'm like, this isn't home for me. But I hear what you said about, you know, you're carrying a heavy load and you didn't even realize it till you got to Nigeria. And so I don't know, that sense of home, and like, how do you deal with it? And yeah, is the UK home? Is Nigeria home? Will you come back here?
So thank you for the question. It's a great question. So it's really funny because my family are completely just bewildered. I was the last ever person that they thought would move back to Nigeria. And I was born in Nigeria, in Lagos, and I moved to the UK when I was 12. And for like 10 years, because it was a really brutal regime at the time, and a lot of Nigerians left. So for 10 years, we didn't go back. I just didn't engage with it. My home was UK, and, you know, I became very British because I was bullied. You know, it was a time when you were bullied for being African, Africa boo boo and all of that nonsense. And so I tried to become very quickly like the Brits. I wanted to assimilate and be like everybody else, because I was like becoming a teenager, and teenagers don't like to be different or stand out, etc. So I made my home Britain, and but after 10 years, we started to go back gradually. And for me, it was just like a reconnection. And so I went back. I even got married there in 2009. And, you know, so it was a gradual reintroduction back to Nigerian life. But what really cinched it for me was because I was meeting all these amazing young people through my reporting, through going back. who were just like doing amazing things with very little, you know, like, and you don't hear about that when you're living in the UK. You don't hear a lot of the great things that people are doing. You only see Africa through a lens of problems, poverty, war, all of this stuff. But I discovered a new Africa that I'd never even heard about or thought about. And I was meeting these people, like I said, who were really dynamic and really driven and just determined to make something of themselves. And that really connected to me. And like, you know, I said earlier, it's not a bed of roses. There's a lot that is wrong, like about life here. But, you know, it's not for everybody. You know, my experience is not the same as everybody's experience. It just happened that I really connected with life here. And I just felt that this was part of my next chapter. By the time I left the UK, I was really desperate for something new. I'd been at my job 8 years. I was looking for a new experience. I'd lived in the UK 30 years. It was like, what is next in the chapter for me? And this just happened, this homecoming just happened to be the next chapter for me. I mean, you know, kind of, it was an alignment of like this kind of full circle of me going away and then coming back to impact with the knowledge that I had gained abroad and to shine a light on the stories that I wasn't discovering when I was in the UK. So really, you know, it's not for everybody. But I came here, I was accepted with open arms, and my daughter loves it here, you know, and there's actually a better standard of living here, because if you're in a certain position, certain job, etc., you can afford to live in the better parts of town, etc. So for me, it's worked out. But I do know a lot of people who came with the same kind of hope and you know, ambition that I did, but they've all gone back. So it's not for everybody. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Next question is from Amma. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. They've been very interesting. My question is for Janet. And I'm sort of going through coaching at the moment, and I do think it's a positive thing. But what I find is that what you discuss with your coach and the reality of your career are not often the same thing. And I'm sort of at a phase now where I'm just thinking, it's very hard to progress your career if you're in an environment which I don't want to say adversarial, but if it's not supporting you, and it could be for various reasons, I'm not sure how effective coaching can be. And so I'm just quite interested in your energy is very good, and as an individual, you may have good energy yourself, but if you're in a toxic environment or an environment that isn't respectful of your difference or your ethnicity or who you are, I'm not quite sure how effective coaching can be.
So my question is, why are you in
And
that
who's
environment?
that director? Oh, Janet, sorry.
I mean, yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
So
Sorry, I said Janet, I didn't speak clearly enough. Sorry.
That's okay. I started. Yeah. So, are you working for somebody else, or is this your own business?
Working for somebody else.
Right. Okay. So, do you have an option to leave that place and move to somewhere that isn't toxic?
Yeah, I think you always have options. So yes, that's an obvious one. But I was just wondering, just if you're in an environment which, is not always, which is quite aggressive. It's just, so I just wonder how you implement the things that you're being coached.
Why are you there would be my initial question to you, because we all have choices, and our lives are built by the choices that we make. Yeah. So why are you there? What is keeping you there and preventing you from moving?
That's an interesting question. I think why I'm there is because I actually enjoy the work. What's preventing me from leaving is trying to find something that fits with what I'm looking for and how I want to progress my career.
And you say you're working with a coach at the moment?
Yeah.
But it's
But
not...
I mean, it was more a general question. I didn't necessarily want to go.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So sorry, what was the general question?
It's more a general question.
Was that the general question?
Yeah, essentially. Yes, exactly.
Coaching with the right person always works. Coaching with the right person always works. Coaching with the wrong person rarely does. And the wrong person is a coach, and there's a difference between a coach and a mentor, and I want to make that really, really clear. A mentor will guide you down a certain path that they have walked before. A coach brings out the best of you. Yeah. A coach rarely gives actual, proper, tangible advice. Do this, do this, do that. They don't do that. As a coach, I bring out the magic, the magic and the genius that is within you. My work connects you with your highest self, so you can actually start to appreciate that you know all the answers already. And it's taking out the layers that prevent you from hearing that you know the answers. It's taking out all of the programming, the patterns, the paradigms, the patterns of thought, the patterns of behavior, the belief systems that prevent you from understanding and hearing your truest voice. Because as soon as we can get rid of those layers, and as soon as you actually start properly hearing like your soul, I mean, I don't use words like soul too much, but yeah, when you can properly tune into you, the essence of you, then coaching absolutely works, because you realize that you are actually your greatest coach. And what a good coach will do is take out the barrier between you and you. Does that answer your question?
Oh, shit.
I got you.
Oh, she might be muted. But that is a great answer. Regardless, that is a fantastic answer. So thank you so much, Janet. Really appreciate that. So it's 8:27. Just before we go to our rooms, where Jess does this amazing thing where it's called the breakout room and we all go into our rooms. Very quickly, ladies, can you briefly tell us what is your biggest achievement so far? Let's start with Dr. Bahija, please.
Oh, my biggest achievement so far has been my growth in actually understanding what I need for my self-care. That's actually been my biggest achievement, because, you know, throughout today's conversation, we've talked about the different experiences that we have collectively in terms of racism, things that we've experienced. And then we've talked about our ambitions, our drives, but that does come with a price. To be successful and to be ambitious, to be driven comes with a price. And the person or the thing that takes the most hit is your body. Your body is the one that suffers the most when you're stressed, it's you. So I would actually say my biggest achievement is knowing I have good self-care practices, I meditate. Sometimes I have to snap myself out of my meditation because it's so peaceful. I've recently started, so Janet, when you were talking about gratitude journal, I do that. Nothing is more precious than waking up to gratitude and going to bed with gratitude. So those self-care practices for me are the things that have allowed me to be present, to appreciate what I've achieved in the areas that outwardly people would look at would think is success, and then inwardly what I know for me feels like success. So yeah, I would say that for me has really been it. And to be able to, you know, go through different experiences and know, oh, I need to do this to make sure that I'm balanced. I need to do that to make sure that I'm balanced. I think for me, that is actually my biggest achievement.
Brilliant, thank you. Stephanie, what's your biggest achievement?
So, gosh, I think actually when I think about this fundamentally, apart from my daughter, which is, you know, hands down one of the best things I've ever done, having my daughter, I think taking myself out of a toxic work environment when I used to work on a tabloid. So I worked on a tabloid very early in my career. And at the time I thought I'd arrived, you know, but it was so clear that I was in the wrong environment for the kind of journalism that I fundamentally wanted to do as a person. I was doing showbiz journalism, and it was such a toxic environment. And, you know, it was glamorous and all of the rest of it. You got to go to premieres and interview like Hollywood stars, etc. But fundamentally, it was not who I was, who I wanted to be, or the kind of stories I wanted to tell. And I burnt out. Just like you, Janet. Perhaps not quite as gravely, but I was literally sitting at my desk, and I love what you said about your body shuts down if you don't listen to it. And the signs were there. The signs were there that I needed to stop. I needed to take myself out of this environment. And I got up and I was like, oh, I don't feel good. I collapsed and I started having fits. Like, I'm not epileptic. And I was hospitalized, and I knew as they were taking me out of that office that I would never go back there again. Like, I just knew instinctively. And I quit journalism, actually. This was in 2007. I quit journalism. I thought, oh God, I'm not going to be a journalist anymore. It's too hard. And it was the turning point for me. I went to work on reception in a company, like financial company. I was like 9 to 5. I loved it, because my life before that was just completely nuts. No start, no work, no kind of finishing time, could never turn my phone off, all of this stuff. But it was a turning point, and I pivoted to do the kind of journalism that I really wanted to do, that has won me awards, that has, you know, really made my career, you know, because it's about people, it's about real life people and telling their stories of impact. And one of them is about the missing Chibok girls, just in a nutshell. That's probably my career highlight today, is working on that story for 5 years, and getting the video that proved that they were still alive, and which led to their release, or some of their release. So anyway, in a nutshell, that pivotal moment was fundamental to the success of who I am today.
Brilliant, thank you. And that moment was incredible, because I believe you guys were the first ones to actually break that news. So that whole piece was extremely exclusive and groundbreaking. And when all the other news outlets just kind of like went on to the next thing, you guys in the background were still having these conversations with the parents and the family, and still keeping that news alive. So yeah, I mean, I've got tingles. That was incredible, because I'm actually just remembering what you guys actually did, and you were leading that. So yeah, thank you. And Janet, what was your biggest achievements so far?
Yeah, I think it's being alive. Still being here.
Of course, Janet, of course, we need you.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. Achievements are funny things, aren't they? I'm just so grateful to be alive. Honestly, that is the overarching gratitude, and the biggest achievement is being alive. Having my children, seeing my children growing up, is just amazing. I can't really beat it.
I mean, that is incredible. And I guess it just reminds us again about just life, breathing. just a simple thing of life and having the precious gift again of waking up for another day and doing it again as if it's our last. And that seems really kind of like, that just made me feel funny, because I'm saying breathing, and obviously George Floyd couldn't breathe, and here we are going full circle from when we began this conversation, when I opened it up, acknowledging about, you know, where we're at, and here you are saying, yes,